Excellent, there we are. Welcome to MemphisPHP for those watching the live stream, but it's absolutely nobody because I haven't tweeted the link out yet. So we're going to go over to the Twitters. We're going to make sure I tweet it out under the right account. Watch live as we stream or November meetup. PHPC and check. And let's retweet it from a couple accounts. That account, that account, that account, that one. Not the important accounts, unfortunately. Okay. All right. Let's see. Yep, that went. Okay. Excellent. So we have the Hangout window over there. Over here, we are sharing my entire screen. Let me turn the mute off there. Cool. And Brian is talking to me on Twitter. Let's turn that off. Okay. And let's definitely retweet that. Brian talking about how he made sure I was properly intoxicated. True story. All right, let's play this. Let's go full screen. Turn my hotspot off. I don't need that. All right, welcome to MemphisPHP. I'm going to stop playing it. Let's see. Let's go back to the first slide. Yes. So tonight I'm going to be doing a live demo of taking a WordPress site to a static HTML site with Sculpin. Sculpin is very similar to Jekyll or some other similar static websites. Before we get started, I want to thank our sponsors, primarily Vaco and Bob, who is here with us tonight. If you are looking for the job, or if you are looking for a job or in the job market, talk to Bob. He can help you out in your job search. Let's see. News, PHP 7, RC7 is released. Pretty much, I'm probably guessed we're going to get an RC8. We were supposed to get a release, but they found a couple of bugs. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw an RC8. So upcoming Nomad PHP, using app agility to build APIs everyone can enjoy. That's Corey Fowler. He's actually the Microsoft. He's not really a dev evangelist, but he kind of is a dev evangelist. He's going to be talking about the Zend plugin app agility to kind of create APIs on the fly. It's really cool. I saw a couple of presentations on it at ZenCon. Looks really cool. The EU meeting for Nomad PHP is PHP Projects Beyond the LAMP Stack by Taze Farron. Let's see, what else do we have? We have Nomad Lightning Talks. The most recent Lightning Talks we've posted are Intro to Craft CMS by Sam Hernandez, who is a coworker of Luke and I. He does a lot of Craft CMS stuff for Vector, where we work. We have What Makes PHP Storm Great for Development, was done by Matthew Setter, who I actually got to meet in person at PHP World this past week. Really cool Lightning Talk. If you're not a PHP Storm user, check that out. He goes through a lot of the cool things that I like about PHP Storm, some of the features and stuff. Upcoming local events, the tech lunches happen every Wednesday, Tuesday. The tech lunch downtown and Midtown alternates between weeks. So one week it's a downtown, one week it's Midtown. Local community news. The Super Lunch is Super Lunch 2, a very Merry Thanksgiving, is tomorrow. It is, I believe the RSVPs may still be open. If they're not, please talk to Daniel Soskel. He will be able to help you out.
They closed Friday.
They closed Friday. Yeah, talk to Soskel. He could probably get you in if you're still interested in going. If you like submitting to conferences, the CFP report. Nope, come back. Nope, that was not what I wanted to do. The CFP report is something that Cal and Kathy Evans have started up. Essentially what they do is they aggregate a list of open CFPs that are active for web development, and they post them on their website, and you can go subscribe to get a weekly email or however often you want email to all of these open CFPs. I've been on it since they announced it a couple weeks ago, and it's been pretty interesting. All right, that is all we have for news. Just because I'm curious, let's see how many people. We have 2 live viewers. Excellent. Let's check the Twitters. Oh dear, Code Rabbi liked it. And nobody else has retweeted it. Okay, cool. All right, so let's see. We can still actually connect to the internet. So what I'm going to do tonight, and this could be a little painful. I will try to make this as least painful as possible, but I'm going to go ahead and warn you on the front end. Never done this before. But I actually have cheated. Last night I went and spent some time building the theme that we're going to use for the front end of the website. So you won't have to watch me code HTML. So if you came here tonight to watch me code HTML, you're going to be sorely disappointed. I'm going to write a very little amount, and then I'm going to cheat and pull it from the repo I already have. So this is our website now, and what we're going to do is we're actually going to live migrate the WordPressPHP.org, or I'm sorry, not the WordPressPHP.org. That's not the right site. It's MemphisPHP.org. We're going to take our website that we use for the user group, and we're going to transform it from WordPress to Sculpin. So a quick little introduction, if you're not familiar. We have a very basic WordPress site. We use a couple of plugins. Namely, the only plugins we really use are for spam prevention and some email sending. Like we use a specific SMTP server to send email. That way I don't have to run email on the local server that the site's running on. We use a meetup widget to actually pull the latest meetup data. That's actually a pain because I have to go update the meetup ID in that widget every month, and I'm really terrible at doing that. So it's almost really old. And that's just the meetup plugin that I'm using. That's not specific to, you know, there's probably a better plugin I could be using. I just haven't found it yet.
Yeah, that's one that I use that I don't have to update.
Yeah. So that's one thing that I haven't fixed yet. What I'm planning to do later is go back and do some JavaScript magic to pull the latest WordPress or pull the latest meetup into it via JavaScript. I use a meta slider, which is what you saw on the front page, to slide the images that we have that we really need to update. We also use Discuss comment system, which is allows us to not have to rely on WordPress's comment system to handle discussions. Discuss is actually a kind of a drop-in solution or a drop-in replacement for the WordPress comments. So I really like using that. I've used it in a couple different places before, and I use it on my personal site, so I'm a big fan of Discuss. We're going to keep using Discuss. I'll show you how that plugs into Sculpin. It's really easy to do. I hope I've done it right. I may not have done it right, so that may be one of the things we fix tonight. We have this theme called Vantage, and I believe I've paid, yes, it's a premium theme. I paid for it a year or two ago just because it came with a couple of different things that I really liked. So if we go look at MemphisPHP.org, have this slider. That's really the only thing that we're really getting out of the slider plugin. But if we look at our website and we kind of scale it down to what a phone would be, you'll see that it's responsive and it's pretty well done. And you know, for me, being a backend developer, and I don't know why Chrome doesn't want to keep it at phone size. There we go. So once you shrink it down to phone size, we have this menu, this responsive menu that allows us to navigate to the different pages. We have a community page. We have the sponsor page. We have this news page, which is essentially our blog. Now, we need to really kind of update our sponsors. We don't have all these same sponsors as we've had before. We don't have some of the information is outdated. Some of the user groups here that we're talking about on the community page are a little outdated, or on the Memtech page are a little outdated. But overall, this isn't bad. And really, the big reason I'm wanting to move away from WordPress is because I'm not really managing any content with this, right? WordPress is, for our site, it's kind of overkill. I don't really need all the features and everything WordPress does. I need to be able to post a blog when I want to or when I need to, and I need to update our meetup details every month or find a better solution to handle that. So really, Sculpin, there's no reason not to go to Sculpin. It'll simplify a lot of it, and it'll make the website run faster because with Sculpin, since it's a static site generator, it outputs HTML and CSS, so we don't have to worry about connecting to the database to pull any content. It's all just written out for us automatically. So our site speed will improve drastically just because we're not making any database calls. So if you've never heard of Sculpin, you can go to the website at Get Sculpin. I'm just going to Google it. It's Sculpin.io. Get Sculpin is the Twitter account. That's what it is. So if you're not familiar with Sculpin, it was originally written by a gentleman named Bo Simonson. He is pretty well known in the PHP community. His wife does a lot of open source art, and she did the logo for this. She also does a lot of art for different projects, and she gets a lot of commissions from various PHP groups. We had her do a Nomad PHP art print, and we're actually going to be selling prints come the new year. So she does really awesome art. So Sculpin is static site generator. It's like Jekyll. It's like the different ones that are out there. Jekyll is probably the most common one that I've heard of because that's what GitHub Pages uses, and they integrate really well with it. You can use Sculpin to send out to GitHub Pages, but it's a little bit involved. You have to do a little bit more because GitHub Pages utilizes a specific branch on your GitHub IO repository. There's an extra few steps to get that working with Sculpin, but it's still possible. All right. Just checking on our stream here. It looks like everything is good. We've lost one of our viewers. We have one viewer. Let's check the Twitter, see if anybody's tweeting at us. Nope, nobody's tweeting at us. Make sure. Where are my notifications from MemphisPHP? Oh, there they are. No, nobody's. Oh, that's not my PHP. I'm really bad at the Twitters. I have too many tabs.
Just a few.
Just so many tabs. Okay. I'm going to keep going because this video will be posted later. All right. So how do you get Sculpin? Well, the easiest way to get started with Sculpin is it's just download the FAR. I actually have it installed globally. So if we go to console, let me blow this up a little bit. So I can just do Sculpin. And I have all these commands available. You can do Sculpin install, which is pretty much how you install Sculpin to a local repository. What I actually like to do, what I like to start with, since most of the sites I do have a blog of some sort, if we go to GitHub, actually search for Sculpin blog, there's a blog skeleton on GitHub, which you can pull this repository down and just do a Sculpin install. And it will install pretty much Bootstrap blog for you. A little bit bigger. So what we're going to do is we will clone this down. Oh, let's not do that. Let's do git clone. So then we will go into that folder and do a Sculpin install. And Sculpin has Composer built into it. So it's using Composer, but it's somewhat built into the Sculpin library, the Sculpin FAR itself. So you have commands available like Sculpin install, which is essentially Composer install. You also have Sculpin dump auto, which works exactly like the Composer dump auto will be when you need to update or your compiled libraries. So if you add a dependency and it's not getting picked up properly, you can do dump auto. It'll recompile all your compiled classes. You can also do Sculpin update, I believe. Let's look at that and see. You can do Sculpin update. Will update your dependencies. You can also do a self update, which will update Sculpin to the latest version. So if you're not sure if Sculpin has had a tagged update, you can do self update. We're using the latest version. We've already done Sculpin install. Let's make sure. So now Sculpin has this built-in watch file or this watch server. So what you can do is do Sculpin generate watch server. And that will compile all of the files locally and start a web server on port 8000 on your local host. So if we go look at localhost 8000, this is what we have. So we have this blog post, we have Bootstrap, we have our Bootstrap menu up at the top, which has post archive, categories, tags, we have this about page. And if we click on a blog post, it'll take us to the blog post, so you can see that we're now in. We have this permalink structure. We have blog, the year, the month, and the day it was posted, and we have the title of the post. So this is actually rendered from a markdown file. So if we go into PHP Storm, and let's open a folder, And it's going to be MemphisPHP off of our home folder. So you have this app folder and you have the source folder. So jumping into where that post was, we're going to go look at the post folder in the source folder, and we're going to look at highlight.md, which this is the file that was used to create that blog post. So there's some YAML syntax at the start, which is how you designate like the title, categories. If you had an author, if you were checking your authors for a post, you could say something like authors Joe. Maybe Luke was an author on this blog post, and you can go and set these data constructs on a per post level. We're not going to do that just yet. You can also use textile. You just have the same YAML block, and this is what Sculpin really uses to figure out what the title of the post is and what the categories and tags are. You can extend this yourself and build bundles to add whatever data here you want. You can add different data sources to pretty much build out whatever you want. So the actual main Sculpin app folder has this config folder where you have the Sculpin kernel and you have the Sculpin site. Let me split that. Let's go Sculpin site. So the site file pretty much tells you the title of your blog, the subtitle, and you can let's go see. In our example, we're going to do MemphisPHP.org, and our subtitle may be something like the MemphisPHP user group. Now our permalink, blog, year, month, day, file name, that's fine with me. Let's just leave that as is. And you'll notice, because we ran this watch file, anytime a file changes, it'll recompile the entire site. So if I throw that down here and I throw this up, and I change a file here, you'll see that it recompiled all of our source. So that whenever you change a file and hit save, if you're running the watch server, you can see that things will be updated in real time, or close to real time, because it is compiling everything and writing it out to disk. So let's go back to PHP Storm. Let's change that. And everything is changing in relatively real time. Now we have this output dev folder. You have output dev. You can have output in different environments. Because we're running the watch server, they'll output into this dev folder, and that's what's essentially running the local environment. If we want to do a publish, if we wanted to actually build this out for a production environment, you would do Sculpin generate environment prod. And running this command, let's close our server, our watch server, generate a production environment. It runs the same build of the site, but if we go to PHP Storm, we'll actually have this output prod folder. And this is what we're actually building out for the production environment. You can have as many environments as you want. If you need a staging environment or a test environment, you can just keep building these out. What I like to do is I like to have this watch shell script. So I'm going to cheat and copy the one that I've already written for us. And what I've done here is I pretty much just took the watch server command, threw it in a shell script, because I can never remember Sculpin generate --watch --server. So now all I have to remember is sh watch.sh. And now my server's running. So I can go make a change, save the file, and before I can even tab over and back to the tab, it's updated. Now there is a limitation to this. So let's say I want to go add a new blog post. So we'll go to the source folder and the post, and the special folders that you see here that start with an underscore, these are data folders. This is what Sculpin's going to use to generate the site. They won't be included in the output. So if we just check that, you can see we don't have this source folder. We don't have the post. We don't have the we don't have the post folder. We don't have layouts. We don't have views. That stuff gets translated by Sculpin into the actual layout files. So if we want to go generate a new post, let's copy and paste a post. Let's see. We're going to create a new file. Let's say, what is it? 2015 11/24 for test post.md. So we're saving this file, and the problem is the watch server only knows about files at the time you run it. So if you add files or delete files, the watch server may crash if you delete a file. I've seen that a few times, and it may not be able to pick up a new post. Like right now, I should have this new post that I wrote, our test post, right? And that's not how I do that. So, but I only have this one syntax highlighting. So what I find myself doing quite often is just restarting the watch server. And then when I restart the browser, oh, it's because I'm viewing that actual, let's go to the index. There we go. So now we have our test post because I restarted the watch server. This is the same if you add new posts, if you add new CSS files, images, assets, jQuery. If you're adding any files or taking any files away, you need to restart the launch or the watch process, just so it can reread. And you'll see it's actually running this debug. It's saying, hey, I see this source file. I see this category page. I see all these components that we're adding. Here, since we're loading the default theme or the default layout stuff, we only have this default components. Like there's Bootstrap, there's Highlight.js, there's jQuery is in there for the Bootstrap. We have some basic favicons, some images. But for MemphisPHP, we really don't need any of this. Our goal here is to take our WordPress site and convert it to a static site. So the first thing I did is I pulled down, well actually I nuked a lot of the theme folders and the posts. So Sculpin themes is a bit undocumented. There is some documentation there. And there's this big warning here of, hey, this may break at will. They're still experimenting with this. So it's been stable since early 2014. I've not had them break anything with it, so you're probably safe to keep using themes. But if you see something break, it's probably because somebody changed something. It'll happen. So how you can set up a theme is you can add the name of the theme to your Sculpin kernel. So we'll go add that. And this is YAML. So we're going to name our theme MemphisPHP base. Yeah. Now that we've added our theme in our kernel, we need to add it to our source folder. So we'll create a new folder called, oh, I'm losing it here. Themes, maybe? Themes. Folder called themes, and then that theme will need to create a MemphisPHP folder. And we'll create another folder called base. And in that folder, we can move our layouts and our views. And because we move folders, we can restart our watch server. Let's go refresh and make sure things are still working. They could be horribly broken. And they still work. So Sculpin will look in the source folder for an underscore layouts and underscore views for where to pull that data from initially. If it doesn't find it there, it'll look at the Sculpin site, the Sculpin kernel, and look for the theme declaration. If there's a theme, it'll look in the theme folder. And what the theme allows you to do, just like WordPress, where you have all your theme files isolated, your layouts, your views, all of that will be isolated in these folders. It's easy to swap between folders. So if you want to create a base theme, and then later you want to go add a secondary theme, you only have to change your Sculpin kernel file to what theme you're pointing at. So it allows you to kind of have this one basic theme out there working for everybody, and then you can go and start working on another theme relatively easily without having to worry about conflicts within the source folder. And I think I've reached the point where I'm ready to switch over to our other project. Or else I'm going to get things really wrong. Close all of these. Okay. So if you're following along at home, or if you want to see what I'm doing, if you look at github.com/MemphisPHP, this is the repo that is MemphisPHP.org, and I believe I've pushed everything up. Everything is up to date, yeah. So if you're following along at home, which there might be one of you, you can see that repo and follow along with what I'm doing. So we have this same folder. I cloned down that same Sculpin blog to start this project. And I immediately created our themes folder, and I called it MemphisPHP base. I moved our layouts, and I created 3 different layouts. So thinking about MemphisPHP, we have this home page, we have this blog page, and we have this post page, essentially. So what I did is I broke that out into, nope, come back. I broke that into the default, which would be kind of like our regular page, a home page, because that's the only page we have our slider on, and I didn't have a really good way of doing this. There's probably a better way of including the slider and kind of condensing what I have in the default page and the home page. But then I have this post page. And the awesome thing about this is these are Twig files. So you can add Twig bundles, you can write your own Twig plugins, and extend this as much as you want. So the first example of Twig we'll see is this block title. We're pulling in page title. That's actually coming from our app folder in our config for our Sculpin site, where we're setting our title to MemphisPHP and our subtitle to PHP user group. We also, since we're using a theme, we have this Twig shortcut available, theme path. Theme path will take you all the way to the root of your base themes folder, or the root theme that you have installed. For our example, that will take us all the way to the themes MemphisPHP base. So we don't have these really ridiculously long URLs. So this translates to root themes MemphisPHP base, and then it starts. So then we can point our jQuery and JavaScript function, our JavaScript files, at the assets folder, which is where we have this here. Now, a lot of what I've done here is I took the WordPress and I took the plugins that we were using straight from the WordPress repo, or straight from the WordPress install. I went using an SFTP editor and pulled that stuff down because I wanted to pull it in and not worry about missing files. This ended up giving me a ton of extra files that I could probably go delete, specifically a lot with the slider plugin, because we're only using very small portions of it. And probably the Vantage stuff, we're not using a lot of the extra stuff. We're not using some of the loops and some of the less stuff. So I could probably go trim this out. I just haven't yet. So how I got started doing this for the default plug, or the default page, is where I started. Let's go default. Essentially what I did is I went to the MemphisPHP.org. I logged out of WordPress because I didn't want all of the WordPress dashboard stuff and specific links as I was logged in. I did a view source, and I copied and pasted. I started at the top, and I was like, okay, well, I don't need that. I don't need that. Don't care about the feed stuff. We can add that later. A lot of this JS stuff, or a lot of the CSS is for WordPress specific stuff. I don't care about that because we're not going to use the WordPress stuff. Now, if I split this with our default, you can see some of how I started tweaking things. So our title, before we were hard coding it, or well, WordPress thought we were hard coding it because this is what WordPress is rendering. I made it dynamic based on the page title, the site title, and site subtitle. And then I substituted the theme path from where WordPress was expecting the data to be. Because with WordPress, you have this WP content folder, then the themes, then you start with Advantage, which is the name of the theme we're using. With Sculpin, I just didn't need to do theme path because I pulled that folder down. I tried to separate it out and keep it a little bit easier to understand. Any jQuery, JS, or images that we were using, like we have a bunch of images in our, or we have a handful of images in our slider. We have our sponsor logos in the root page. Like we have the Vaco logo, we have the Layer Jobs logo. That kind of stuff I put into assets. All the theme-specific stuff I kept kind of in the theme. And we also have this plugin for the slider, which the theme uses. I kept that separate as well. I didn't put that in assets because it was a little bit kind of confined to itself. So essentially, after I pasted that template, it was kind of a find and replace for any source files that were using external resources and just updating the URLs. The other thing I did is, if you look at our sponsors or some of our navigation, because our navigation wasn't being built out by any kind of dynamic thing like WordPress, I made everything relative to the root domain and then shortened the URL so we weren't dependent on MemphisPHP. Oh, that wasn't what I wanted to do. All right. Okay, there we go. So now we're just dependent on the root URL, and this does two things for us. It makes the HTML a little bit less explicit. Kind of, you know, we know where we're supposed to be for our URL links. This also allows us to use a local server and use localhost that where we're not actually dependent on the MemphisPHP.org domain. And if we go look at our slider code, the code WordPress was generating was these fully qualified path to the upload folder. But with Sculpin, all I had to do where did that image go? Oh, it's not on the default, it's on the home page. That's what it is. There we go. All I had to do was Sculpin and tell it the theme path. And since I only wanted the slider on our home page, that way the slider wasn't on every single page pushing the content lower, I created this home page template to use just for that indexed HTML. There's probably a way that I could have pulled the slider out, but I was kind of short on time, so I just left it in, and we have a lot of duplicate code. What that means is default and homepage are really the same file. The only difference is homepage has the slider, default doesn't. If I was actually doing this for, you know, real production site where I was really, really worried about not repeating myself, I'd probably go figure out how to split that out, but not something I was entirely worried about. Oh, and I'm not sharing my screen anymore. Let's go back to sharing my screen. There we go. Okay. Let's check on that. Yeah, there I am talking. Excellent. Okay. So how did I actually transfer all of our content from WordPress to Sculpin? Because we have these different blog posts. If I go back and I'll log in. Sounds muted there. Okay, it is. Oh, log back in. So I have these posts, and I didn't want to recreate these posts, right? I could have gone in and copied and pasted the text into new Markdown files, but that's kind of annoying. So Chris Tankersley, Dragon Man Tank, if you know him on Twitter, created this cool Fillet Sculpin bundle, which is an interface for working with Fillet. Because Sculpin is a fish, Fillet is actually taking data out of WordPress. It's an amusing domain name. I chuckled the first time I heard it, or not a domain name, but project name. So what you do is you create the Sculpin kernel file, which allows you to extend Sculpin and add bundles, add packages. Once you do this and run Sculpin update, you'll have access to this fillet command. So what you do is out of WordPress, you can do a tools and export. You can export all of your content to this XML file. Well, running this fillet command, you point it to that XML file, and you tell it what parser to use. As far as I know, I think WordPress is the only parser that's working right now, but that's all we really care about since it's coming from WordPress. When you run that, it actually puts the source file, the source folder for you, because it knows where all of your Sculpin installation is. So you see we created the Sculpin kernel file, which is how we told it to use Fillet. We ran the Fillet command, and it created all of these posts for us in our post folder. Now these are HTML files. They're not Markdown files because it renders the HTML and saves it as the file. If you want to convert them back to Markdown, you can. There's some advantages to HTML and there's some advantages to Markdown. Markdown, it's really explicit, easy to understand, easy to read syntax. The problem with Markdown I have, which is pretty much the showstopper for me, is a lot of times I have HTML links in my code that I want to open in a new tab. You can't do that with Markdown. There's no Markdown spec or there's no Markdown parser that supports that. So essentially you have to either put HTML in your Markdown or use an HTML file and do an HTML href tag. I usually end up doing HTML anyway or a twig file. It'll work with either one here. But just because we do that doesn't limit us to HTML. You can add Markdown files. You can mix and match your post files as much as you want. It also goes through and adds the categories that we had in WordPress. It keeps the slug, which is the URL. It dates it when it was published. And it sets a layout to post. It assumes that you're using a post layout. If you don't want to use that layout, you can use something else. I use post just because that's the convention. If you want to add tags, you can add tags. It'll show up as well. Let's go through and close that. Let's go up to our actual project. Run the watch server here. And if we go back to our local host, refresh, we're now using our theme, our MemphisPHP base theme, where it's pulling all of our content in our posts from our source post folder. And these are all these HTML files. So we turned our blog URL into the news. You can go view each post as its own. And because we're using this post theme, or this post template, sorry, it's actually using that to render out the HTML file. The one problem I had is you can see this post file, looking at the twig code here, it's very different from this. I couldn't really figure out why that was. I've worked this out for the Fergie site and for a couple other Sculpin sites I had, but I think I've just done something weird with my HTML files. It should be using that post template, but it's not. It's using the default template. And if you go look at your actual source folder, you see I'm telling it to use the post layout. It just keeps using the default. Not entirely sure why. It's one of the things I haven't figured out just yet. So if we go add another file, add another post, say let's create another file, and let's name it 2015-11-24 MemphisPHP live. And Markdown. Sure, let's add it to get. Why not? Just like all the other posts, we need to add this YAML block to tell Sculpin what this post is actually about. So let's say MemphisPHP live. Let's change the date. Use the post template. Our select should be MemphisPHP live. It'll be a meetup. And this is live streaming and live coding. What could possibly go wrong? So we save that file, and because we create a new file, we need to return our watch server. We go back to our browser, go to our news, and there's our blog post. And our other pages were also translated into HTML pages. So if we go and look at, let's close our theme folder, we have this index.html. And this is our main page. And you see we're telling it to use the homepage layout, which this actually is using our homepage layout in our theme. I'm not sure why this was actually working. This and the default and the homepage themes layout, sorry, we're actually working. I don't know why the post wasn't working. It's probably something weird I'm not thinking about with Swig. Make sure I don't kick the cable out again. Okay. So here, and if you're familiar with Twig, you know you usually have blocks where you can extend or yield content, and blade templating is very similar. So if we look at our homepage template, if we scroll down, not too far, we have this content block. I think this is just some magic Sculpin is doing to handle where our content should actually be. It's one of those, it's probably a reserved block, and that's where the content of the blog post is actually getting stuck into. So if we look at our index.html, we don't have to, normally you would have to yield this block, right, to submit data in. Sculpin does some magic, and I think it's between, I'm not understanding the magic Sculpin is doing or handling for me that I don't realize it is, and it's probably just me forgetting Twig syntax because I haven't actually used Twig significantly in a while. But essentially, anything after our YAML block here is what's submitted or is what's substituted into that content block. So we can go add whatever else we want. I have this main content ID div in all of my posts because that's just how it seemed to make sense to break out the theme. And then it was just a matter of adding the header, adding some content. And I was just copying and pasting and doing some basic reformatting of our pages. So if you look at the sponsors page on our local version, you see I've updated it with the one sponsor we have at the moment. If we look at MemphisPHP.org and do sponsors, let's see our, did I just totally go to the wrong URL? Probably did. There we go. You'll see our old page. I just commented out our sponsors because we're not utilizing these sponsors every month anymore. Same thing for the community. We have this little blurb about community. We list a bunch of different community projects for MemphisPHP that are related to PHP. If you look at this, it's essentially the same page. Let's go back here. Pretty close. There's a little bit of differences, but like header, I can easily go add the header, and I'm still logged into WordPress, so that's probably a little bit difference. So we also have our Memtech page, which is where we list all the other active and inactive user groups. And this is probably out of date. I think the one on MemphisTechnology.org is actually a little bit more up to date. But that page is our Memtech template. And I can't use Markdown syntax here because it's not a Markdown file. If I wanted to use Markdown syntax, it would actually have to be in a Markdown file. So if I go update our blog post that is written in Markdown, and then I go look at our news, see it actually is translated to UL's list items from Markdown. So on one hand, Sculpin gives you really easy ways to create rich text blog posts via Markdown, but there's trade-offs. Like in Markdown, I can't go put a target on my href, which isn't a huge deal, but for me, I want to make sure that if we're sending somebody offsite, I send them offsite into a new tab. That way when they close the tab or the window, they come back to us. It's a little bit selfish of me, but what can I say? I spent a lot of years in marketing. So that takes us to, okay, we've got all of our blog posts set up. We've pulled our data out of WordPress into these HTML files. We've got our HTML written. It's pretty, it looks really close locally. How do we get it off of our local computer and onto an actual web host? And this is the part that I'm going to do live and hope I don't totally toast our website. We'll see. This could go really weird really quickly. So I'm going to do a new tab. Let's make that really big. So I'm going to SSH MemphisPHP at org. Ooh, snap. I don't have line endings, do I?
Hold 63 to go there.
163 probably is there we go. Okay, let's leave that. My Vim skills are lacking. What is that password indeed? Excellent. Okay. So let's jump over to Bash. All right. So we have, this is our shared hosting folder on my server that I use to host a lot of different things. And we have this public HTML folder. And you see it's WordPress. Let's back out of that. Let's move that public HTML folder to public HTML WordPress. All right. So what did that do? Well, that just borked our site because we have no public folder, right? Don't worry though. I know what I'm doing. I'm a trained professional. So we're going to create a new folder called public HTML. And we're going to go into that. We're going to create a new index.html file.
Lincoln marquee tag.
I guess forgot the blinking marquee tags. Stand back, I'm live coding. This is what you would see if you were watching MemphisPHP.org right now. I have totally borked your site. Now, let's see if I have, I don't have, oh, I do have my publish. So there's this publish command that you can run, or you can generate, or I'm sorry, it's a script you can run called publish. I put this in all my repos. Essentially what it does is it creates the production environment, and then it uses rsync over SSH, and it rsyncs this output prod folder to wherever you want it to go. So assuming I haven't completely borked this up, we can run sh publish. It'll generate the site, rsync everything up, because I don't have my SSH key installed. There we go. So now I may have to go delete that folder, that file I created. There we go. Oh, God, it's huge. There we go. Excellent. Disaster averted. So now we're running Sculpin. And we can test this because I can now try to go to WordPress login.php and we 404. So WordPress is no longer installed. Now the site is no longer hitting the database. Everything is running as static HTML. We can use Markdown to create our blog posts, and I actually have this blog post that I should go create, or I should go delete. Let's delete this blog post. And we'll go run our publish again. Yes, sure, type the password. And if you're using SSH keys, like you should, you won't have to type your password. That's just me. And there we go. So you can add and delete blog posts at will. You can also set blog posts into the future, and they won't show until time passes when you compile. Now, just because you publish at one point in time, so if I set a blog post to publish tomorrow morning, it's in draft mode, it's not going to publish tomorrow morning at the time. I have to publish it again for it to rerun. The thing is you're analyzing all these static files, and then you're compiling them down to HTML, and then are syncing them out. And let's go make sure all of our pages work. Mailing list throws us to a new file, which is fine, or a new tab, sorry. Our blog index works. Let's make sure our posts work. They do. Let's go here. Let's check and make sure our YouTube embeds are working. They are, because I was just using regular HTML to embed those, and the YouTube videos will play as expected. And then our homepage works and actually has a little bit more up-to-date information. So now I've taken WordPress, thrown it to Sculpin, no longer using a database, no longer need MySQL. If this was the only site I had on the server, I could tune this down to a next to nothing, probably less than a 512. I probably can't get a VPS lower than 512 these days that I could run this on. Because at this point now, 512 megabytes of RAM is huge overkill for this. We're just serving static assets. Any questions?
Siege on it.
Do what?
Tell a trigger siege on it.
You could turn Siege on it, and the first bottleneck I assume you are going to get is probably Apache, because Apache is going to have more overhead for serving static assets than Nginx would. But that's just because I'm using VirtualMin, and VirtualMin uses Apache out of the box. Any questions? Awesome. Okay. I'm going to kill the live stream so it's not like awkward waiting on me to talk about something. If you watched the live stream, thanks for watching. We'll see you later.